vel, da det søndagskveld, og denne tok jeg bare litt på sparket, for jeg satt og så på noe dette som gjelder med fiat-penger. Så denne vil jeg anbefale alle som ikke har tro på disse herrene korrupte politikerne, eller arveprinsene fra Kjelta, eller playboyen fra Nærbø, de som kan tenke selv, de som tror på ekte ting. Og ikke til alle politikerne som har arvet eller fått disse posisjonene som vi ser i dag. De bør virkelig se de filmene som jeg la på Facebook i dag. De er veldig bra tillagte, de er veldig opplysende, det går på historie. Og nå får du opplest bitte litt, så jeg fikk AI til å skrive, oppsummere, så du får digitalt opplest. Og dette gjør jeg bare fordi at jeg håper at folk skal våkne opp fra disse herrene playboyene som tror at de skal gjøre akkurat som de vil med folk. For det er det de gjør. For dette herrene med arveprinsene og de som har fått posisjonene i samfunn, det er alt for mange av dem. Det er kjeltringer av pakk, alt i hop. Og at de skal være med og sette dagsorden, det er jeg imot. For jeg er for ærlighet, jeg er ikke for sånn kjeltringer skal holde på å komme frem i media, piss de lirer årsak, bare for de skal fylle pengene sine på din og min og alle og fremtidige de unge sin bekostning. For de skal sue ut statskassen. For det er nå en gang sånn at i Norge er det opplagt sånn at det er staten som skal ta seg av pensjonen. Men det høres så flott ut. Det høres veldig flott ut. Men det er et robberi. Det er svindel og bedrag. Og vi ser jo hvor pengene blir av. Enten går det til staten eller til utlandet, eller så går det til noen party-snobbere. Ja, så det irriterer meg. Og derfor jeg går ut med det også, for det at alle vil merke dette. Men jeg ser det jo litt stund før de fleste. Og det er jo på grunn av den historien jeg har vært gjennom. Jeg har studert dette her pillråtne systemet. Jeg ser nå at det er ikke en ærlig kjeft så jeg opplevde i hvert fall i domstolen, eller i politiet, eller i kommuner, eller advokater. Det er lasseroner og kjeltringer, pakk, alt i hop. Og når de har lurt meg, så kan de lure, og mange andre, og vi ser hvor mange det er som varsler i dag, så hvorfor skal de ikke lure deg, bare fordi du ikke stiller kritiske spørsmål? Det er det som er problemet til oss og mange som har problemet, det er for vi stiller kritiske spørsmål. Vi stoler ikke på den der løgnen som vanlige folk stoler på. For vi har vært opplevd fra vugge til grav at vi skal stole på systemet. Men systemet har lurt oss. Det er bare å studere. Ser du de 3 filmene der som jeg har på Facebooken, som jeg har lagt ut i dag. Og hvis du da ikke forstår det, ja, da er du hjelpeløs. Da er meningen, da skal du ikke forstå det heller. Da må du bare tilbe disse herrene partyløvene. Enten de er Sherman Sheikh, eller det er andre entreprenører som tror de har hele vedet. For de har ikke vet noen av. De har arvet posisjonene, og det har de vil avsløre seg selv når de har fått elefantsjuk, og enten om det er dobbel eller trippel dose, det vet ikke jeg, men jeg venter og jeg får rett her også. Så nå går jeg over det digitalt oppleste.
Penger før og nå, fra dødsstraff mot juks til inflasjon som hverdag. Hvorfor bønder fikk det tøffere fra metallpenger til paper money? Coinage Act av 1792, loven som Amerika glemte. Visste du at dollaren en gang var bundet til gull og sølv? I 1792 vedtok USA Coinage Act, en lov som definerte verdien av hver dollar og la grunnlaget for landets økonomiske fremtid. Når vi i dag ser på inflasjon, fallende kjøpekraft og fiat-penger uten dekning, er det lett å glemme at dette ikke alltid var normalen. Å kjenne denne historien gir oss nøkkelen til å forstå hvorfor sparepengene våre mister verdi år etter år. Pekefinger, kunnskap om økonomi og historie er ekte rikdom. Det angår deg, familien din og hverdagen vår mer enn vi tror. Kort historikk fra filmen 1792, dollaren ble definert i sølv og gull. Penger var målbare og faste. 1800- til 1900-tallet, systemet ble gradvis endret. Først obalanser i gull, sølv, så papirpenger i krigstid, til slutt ren fiat, penger uten metalldekning. Resultat: perioder med deflasjon, fallende priser på varer, som knuste inntektene, og senere inflasjon, stigende kostnader, som spiste kjøpekraften. Hva skjedde med landbruket? Deflasjon, 1800-tallet. Matprisene sank pil mot høyre, bonden fikk mindre for korn og melk, men gjelda sto fast i harde penger. Gjelda ble tyngre i realverdi. Inflasjon, 1900 til 2000-tallet, kostnader for diesel, gjødsel, fôr. Renter og maskiner steg raskt, pil mot høyre, marginene krympet. Kreditt og renter, når penger lages som kreditt, flytter makt til banker og renter. Høye renter pluss lave varepriser er lik press på likviditet. Ulik timing. Priser på innsatsfaktorer stiger ofte før bonden får oppgjør for varene. Det gir kontantstrammere og mer risiko. Hvorfor dette angår oss alle, når penger mister verdi, blir matproduksjon mer sårbar. Lokalt jordbruk trenger forutsigbare rammer, ikke prissvingninger skapt av pengepolitikk. Kunnskap er ekte rikdom. Forstår vi Pensjonenes historie, kan vi bedre beskytte familier. Gårder og matberedskap. Enkelt sagt, endringer i pengesystemet flytter risiko til bonden. Før tok deflasjon inntekten, nå tar inflasjon kostnadssiden. Uten kunnskap mister vi begge veier. Penger før og nå, fra dødsstraff mot juks til inflasjon som hverdag 1792, USA definerte dollaren i gull og sølv. Å forfalske eller utvanne penger ble sett på som tyveri fra alle, derfor svært strengt straffet, til og med dødsstraff for grov svindel knyttet til myntverket. Poenget var klart. Penger må være ærlige. I dag, de fleste land bruker fiat-penger, ikke bundet til metall. Myndigheter og sentralbanker kan øke pengemengden. Det gir rom for krisehåndtering, men også inflasjon, som tømmer kjøpekraften stille og jevnt. Hvorfor dette angår pensjonen din? Pensjoner, fond og spareavtaler er priset i fiat. Når prisene stiger raskere enn avkastningen, krymper verdien av det du har spart. Høye renter pluss høy prisvekst er lik dyrere lån, dyrere drift for bedrifter, lavere realavkastning for sparere. Små prosent hvert år blir store tap over tid. Digitalt pengesystem praktisk, men digitale penger kan være raske og billige, men mer digitalisering kan også bety mer overvåkning og styring, hva du kjøper, hvor, når. Uten åpen debatt kan frihet byttes mot komfort. Hva du kan gjøre, enkle, ikke-tekniske steg, lær litt hver uke om penger, inflasjon og renter. 15 minutter holder, se på pensjonen din. Hva er forventet realavkastning etter inflasjon? Spre risiko, tidshorisont, aktivaklasser, kostnader. Still spørsmål til bank, forvalter og politikere. De jobber for deg, ikke omvendt. Snakk sammen i familien. Kunnskap beskytter både deg og dine nærmeste. Kjernen i 1792 ville man hindre pengejuks fordi det rammet alle. I dag skjer juks mer stille, gjennom inflasjon og midlertidige pengegrep som aldri tar slutt. Pekefinger, kunnskap er ekte rikdom. Uten den mister vi verdier, med den får vi frihet. Film NR2. Seinjorage, loven om profitt bak hver mynt du holder i hånden skjuler en gammel hemmelighet, en profittregel som har bygget rike her, og som fortsatt styrer dagens økonomier. Denne videoen avslører seinjorage, den urgamle retten som gir myndigheter mulighet til å skape penger bokstavelig talt. Fra middelalderens konger til dagens digitale sentralbanker. Oppdag hvordan de som har makten forvandler metall, papir og tall på en skjerm til rikdom for seg selv, mens du betaler prisen uten å merke det. Pekefinger, dette er den skjulte historien om Pensjonenes mest lønnsomme triks, og hvordan det stille tapper verdien ut av lommene dine. Film NR3. I dag lever vi på fiat-penger, der staten og bankene kan trykke uendelig med verdier ut av løse luften. Inflasjonen som følger spiser stille opp sparepenger, lønn og pensjoner. For nordmenn er dette ekstra alvorlig. Hvorfor? Pensjonene er statlig forvaltet. Vi får ikke selv velge trygg havn, vi må stole på at staten håndterer alt. Hele livsverket til vanlige folk, pensjon, trygd og sparing, er dermed låst. Inne i et system bygget på gjeld og tillit til at fiat alltid vil bestå. Når tilliten brister, når kronen svekkes, når verdens finanssystem skifter, da kommer sjokket. Ikke gradvis, men plutselig. Nordmenn flest har blitt fortalt at staten ordner alt. Vi sover trygt i troen på oljefondet og offentlige garantier. Men sannheten er brutal, det er akkurat da du er mest sårbar. Når Clive Thompson advarer om at fiat-systemet nærmer seg slutten, handler det ikke bare om USA eller Europa. Det handler direkte om din fremtidige pensjon, din kjøpekraft og din frihet. De som forstår historien, ser hvor dette bærer. De som ikke gjør det, vil møte fremtiden med sjokk og tomme hender. Kunnskap er den eneste ekte rikdommen. Hvorfor dette er relevant for deg når en person med så lang erfaring og innsikt advarer om at systemet er i ferd med å kollapse, så bør vi som vanlige sparere lytte litt ekstra. Hans erfaring viser at selv formuende kunder av private banker har hatt utfordringer når strukturelle endringer skjer, så for alle som har pensjon, sparing eller lån, gjelder det samme. Det gir mening at du kobler hans advarsel med pensjonen vår, fordi nettopp det langsiktige perspektivet er noe han har hatt. Kort oversikt. Thompson jobbet i 47 år i bank- og formuesforvaltning. Metallsamminus.substack.com. Han var basert i Sveits og rådga formuende familier og private banker. Nå er han pensjonert, men han følger fortsatt nøye med på finans- og pengesystemer. Karriereelementer og erfaringer. Han startet i finansbransjen i Storbritannia rundt 1975. Metallsamminus.substack.com arbeidet med formuesforvaltning, wealth management, handler blant annet om å bevare og øke formue for kunder over lang tid. Thompson har erfaring med dette for familier og banker. Gjennom flere tiår så han hvordan endringer i pengesystemet, statsgjeld, inflasjon og valutarisiko påvirker både banker og vanlige investorer. Hva er spesielt med hans bakgrunn? Fordi han jobbet bak kulissene. I private banker ser han ting mange ikke ser fra utsiden, som strukturene rundt penger, kapital, systemrisiko. Han har erfaring med at det ikke bare er aksjer og obligasjoner som teller, men også valuta, metall, gull, sølv, kredittrisiko og statsgjeld. Hans perspektiv: når systemet endres, for eksempel fiat-pengene, digital valuta, sentralbanker som får nye verktøy, da er det tilfeldig hvem som blir trygt, og hvem som blir sårbar.
Jeg kan på det sterkeste anbefale å se disse YouTube han la ut nå i dag. Jeg har fulgt han en stund, og han er gammel bankmann, og det er ikke mange av bankfolk som går ut offentlig og sier hva de har vært med på. Men han er en av de. Så jeg kan ikke si noe mer. Folk må jo velge selv om de vil. Tro på den norske myndigheten, så tror på det grønne skiftet, og makteliten som kjøper elektriske lastebiler skal måke snø med. Altså, hvor galt skal dette landet bli? Vi er styrte. Folk ser galskapen overalt. Tror dere pengepolitikken eller pensjonsgreiene er noe bedre enn Norge? De som tror det, de får leve i den bobla. Men folk som har litt grann imellom ørene, ser galskapen, innrømmer det og begynner å sjekke selv, de forstår pels når de begynner å få litt kunnskap om dette. Og derfor jeg sier det ikke for skal være stygge med noe. Jeg synes det er så forferdelig å se ærlige folk som har arbeidet et helt liv og vært nøysomme og liksom skal legge seg av en krone, skal bli robbet, bli frastjålende. Det er den uretten der jeg reagerte på. For grunn av jeg har utsatt selv for dette nå i 11 år. Da var det ikke banken og myndighet som kom, da var det en milliardær, arvemilliardær som kom. Men han brukte systemet for å stjele eiendom fra meg, ta livsgrunnlaget fra meg, det som jeg hadde arbeidet med hele livet. Dette er grunnen for jeg har tatt denne kunnskapen i dag. Det er for jeg har sett systemsvikten. Vi lever ikke i sånn et verden som vi selv tror. Men det nytter ikke å fortelle det. Jeg har prøvd å fortelle det i mange år, men folk forstår det ikke. Men nå er det så kritisk. For nå ser vi jo overalt gull og sølv og gårde og penger og konkurser og prisstigninger. De som nå ikke ser det, ja, de må være både blinde og døve. Og de som ser det, de får i hvert fall en sjans til å prøve å sette seg inn i dette og redde stumpene. Jeg vil ikke noe mer. For jeg vet bare det at det er et land som er styrt av playboyer og arveprinser. Nå refererer jeg til Rogaland. Og det er blitt normalen i hele landet. Playboyer og arveprinser, arver på posisjonene sine. Hva fagen er det av disse her bankdamene, eller så mye damene som styrer Norges Bank og NRK og politikere? Hvem er det de som har gjort noe? Hvem er det som ikke har arvet dette her? Hvem er det som ikke har gjort det på grunn av gjort det anbefalt av en eller annen? Hvem? Svar meg på det. Jeg har ikke sett en person som har startet som gründer og er i dette systemet med å bestemme, eller har offentlig. Det er kjeltringer, pakk, alt. Og kjeltringene og pakket har også rekruttert inn dommere, politiet, det som har med økokrim, spesialenheten. Det ser vi. Norge er pillråttent. Og et land der alt er pillråttent, tror du at de tar av pensjonen din? Nei, da tror du på julenissen. Og hvis du tror på det, ja, lykke til på reisen, sier bare jeg. For Norge er blitt så pillråttent. Og vi ser jo disse arrogante playboyerne. Det fikk jeg bevist nok en gang på fredag. Og disse arvemilliardærene som holder på med meg i 11 år nå. Ingen av hverken politi, domstol, kommune, statsforvalter har grepet inn. Og dette gjelder ikke bare meg, men jeg kan snakke ut for min sak. Jeg har sett utallige andre i Norge som opplevde det samme, litt annen versjon, men vi har ikke rettssikkerhet. Vi har ikke rettssikkerhet i Norge. Og det er derfor jeg kan gå ut med dette. For jeg fordrar ikke urettferdighet. Jeg fordrar ikke lystløgnere. For det er lystløgnere. De klarer ikke å få til noe selv. De må snulte på andre og grave til seg det andre skal, for de er ikke i stand til å skape noe selv. De er ikke i stand til å skape noe selv. En stor skam er det. En stor skam. Og det er det fine. De har ikke kunnskap nok til å forstå dette en gang med gull og sølv en gang. Så når de nå misser alt, altså skal jeg gni dem i hendene. Og det er mange med deg, han er medløperne som ikke har moral og etikk, som tror på dette her faenskapet.
Of wars, revolutions, civil strife, kingdoms, empires, and it's still as valuable as it was 5,000 years ago. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I can tell you that history tells us that when things happen, the one thing which suffers is the fiat money. The gold money always survives, always did, always has, and if something happens in this world that you don't like, it might destroy your fiat cash, but the gold will get you to the other side. It's your wealth shield. I'd like to thank ITM Trading for letting me come on their channel to talk about my personal experiences with you. The reason I'm doing this is ITM Trading is a company I would have no hesitation in buying gold from. They've been around for 30 odd years, they think like me, they want to talk about the history of gold, they enjoy explaining gold and how it fits into your portfolio, and they would be very happy to talk to you about investing in gold and whether it fits in your portfolio. Don't hesitate to call them on the number below this video if you have any questions about gold. So let's come back to my story. I have seen gold carry families through wars. I've seen it protect people across the generations. And I'm grateful to share with you some of those stories today and why I think you should own gold. So my first lesson, or shall I say my first experience, came in 1962. Well, perhaps a year later, but let's start with 1962. I was 5 years old. My grandfather played a trick on me. He put in front of me two things. One was a chocolate bar, costing sixpence. That's, you see the 60, that's 6 old pence. That's at the time when there were 240 pennies in the pound. And he also put on the table a £1 note, a British £1 note. Now, I didn't know that at the age of 5, but with a pound note, I could have bought 40 bars of chocolate, costing sixpence each. My grandfather told me to pick one, and of course, being 5, I took the chocolate bar. And there was a bunch of friends with him, and everybody laughed at my silliness in taking the chocolate bar instead of the pound note, which could have bought me 40 bars of chocolate. Of course, it amused my grandfather highly, but a year later, my grandfather decided to play a similar trick on me. This time he put 3 items on the table. He put the chocolate bar, a £1 note, and a gold sovereign, a British sovereign. A gold British sovereign is a £1 coin, or at least that's the face value of the coin. But by 1962, they were not in circulation anymore, but some people had some of them tucked away in drawers somewhere. But no way you'd be able to easily get your hands on one. So my grandfather put these 3 items on the table in front of me: chocolate £1 note or £1 sovereign made of solid gold. Which one would you like, Clive? Well, having wised up and now being 6 years old, I was a pretty smart kid, so I took the £1 note. And my grandfather thought it was highly amusing, but his friends didn't get what the joke was because they'd never seen a sovereign before and they didn't understand what it was. So I remember my grandfather trying to explain about, I guess it was probably Gresham's law, but certainly he must have explained about sound money and why gold is worth more than paper. At 6 years old, I didn't understand any of that, but I can deduce what he must have been explaining back then. And of course the friends, I don't think they understood what he was saying either, because people hadn't seen gold money for decades and therefore just weren't used to it. So anyway, at some point, I think I was probably about 14 years old, my grandfather gave me this gold sovereign. I'd like to show it to you, but it's locked away in the bank safe, so I can't show it to you today. But basically, my grandfather said, here's your gold sovereign, keep it forever. And that's just what I've done. I've kept it forever. I've bought a few more since then. But that one I've still kept as well. So back in the 1970s, I was working in London. I decided to take the sovereign to Sharps Pixley, which is a coin or gold dealer in central London at the time. And they offered to buy me, or to buy this sovereign from me for £15, or they would sell me another one for £20. I didn't sell, but that day I learned something important. Gold coins are liquid. Anytime I want to raise cash, I can sell them. Gold coins are recognized everywhere. You can trade them anywhere in the world. And if anyone's ever watched the James Bond movies, what did he take with him wherever he went? He took sovereigns. Everybody knew what a sovereign was everywhere in the world, and if he had to bribe kidnappers or get some information, would come in handy. So some years later, I was working in the Cayman Islands in the West Indies. This was the early 1980s. I earned well. I had no tax to pay. So rather than put my money into the local bank, which I didn't intend to stay in Cayman forever, I thought it might be a good idea to put my money into Krugerrands. So every month I'd walk into the local shop with my savings and I'd buy myself a Krugerrand. And it kind of became a habit, a discipline. Of course, Krugerrands were much cheaper then than they are now. Anyway, by the time I left the Cayman Islands, I had a briefcase full of them. And this is where the scary part came in. Arriving at Heathrow Airport, I put my briefcase containing not only all my gold sovereigns, but everything I possessed, all my valuables, because in those days we didn't have wire transfers quite as easily as we have today, so you kind of carried things with you. So I put my briefcase down on the trolley and I turned around to grab my luggage for the conveyor belt, for the luggage belt. But when I looked back, the trolley was gone. Panic, panic. The case had all my gold, all my cash, all my valuables. My wife and I ran around the airport like crazy people. Finally, my wife spotted an elderly couple. They had my briefcase on their trolley. They pretended that they had no idea how it got there, but anyway, we got it back. So that day taught me something vital. When you have physical gold, you protect it with your life. It's not like a bunch of numbers on the screen. You've got to guard it and keep it in a safe place and hang on to it for dear life. It's real. It's something you can touch. And sadly, it's also something which can be stolen, which is where you have to think about how you store it, how you hide it, and how you keep thieving hands off it. So anyway, by the mid-80s, I was working in Swiss private banking in Switzerland as a wealth manager. And one of my clients that I'd inherited from a previous banker was a very special client. This lady was Belgian. She was pretty elderly. I would say she would have been late 80s, mid 80s, something like that. And she was a Holocaust survivor. I was mid 30s, so I knew nothing about this, or not much, but she told me a little bit. But basically her family had somehow managed to end up in Belgium thanks to all the gold which had been deposited in Switzerland in some way, shape or form. I don't know when that happened, maybe after they arrived in Belgium, I can't say. And she said, it's my insurance policy if it ever happens again. Well, Europe was at peace and I didn't see much need for the gold, so I tried to persuade her to sell these gold bars. We had these, there was 30 bars of 1 kilogram each held in our safes. Something like that you see on the screen. These aren't her gold bars, but it kind of gives you a feeling for what they might have looked like. Every time she visited, I would try and persuade her to diversify out of gold into other things. I'd say, look, we have this nice fund, we've got this fund investing in equities, we've got this fund investing in bonds, we've got this fund investing in property, and so on, and try and persuade her that diversification was a good idea. But she wasn't having any of it, and she just basically said, I trust gold, I don't trust your paper. Not offensively, it was nicely put, but she wanted the real thing. And I then tried a different tack. As she visited me over the years, I started to try a different tack with her. I started to say, you've got all this gold, why don't you consider selling it and giving it to your children or your grandchildren so you can get the benefit of seeing the pleasure on their faces when they get the money, which could be useful for them. They could maybe buy houses. And she saw the point, but then she came back a year later and I repeated this and she said, well, Clive, the problem is if I sell the gold, I'll have to pay a lot of capital gains tax. But if I die owning it, there won't be any tax. I said, well, what about death duties? Oh, yes, but it won't be quite as much, especially if it goes to my children. Anyway, long and short of it was, a year later she came back and she said, I've decided to give it to my grandchildren. And so we sold the gold and turned it back into cash. And obviously, one of the things which she was very pleased about, we got the highest price ever, because it seemed that every time she came back, every 2 years, the gold price seemed to be higher than what it was the previous time. So that was another reason why she didn't buy our funds, because our funds just weren't going up as fast as her gold was going up. But anyway, long and short of it, she sold the gold, and all her children or grandchildren, as we say, were able to pay off their mortgages or buy themselves houses. Another story from my career in wealth management, we went into 2008, the global financial crisis, as you may remember it. All the banks around the world were failing everywhere, and no bank would lend to another bank, and many of them were going bankrupt. So the inevitable happened. Everybody, all the wealthy clients, wanted to own gold bars. And now in Switzerland, buying and selling gold bars was as easy as pie. You ring up your bank, say, buy me a gold bar, 1 kilogram perhaps, and the bank would buy it and it'd be in your account the very next day. So normally a very, very easy process, except that when all the clients came calling at once, which was what was happening, the refineries were overwhelmed. The refineries could not deliver the gold within 24 hours. Waiting lists were getting longer and longer, 2 weeks, then 3 weeks before delivery. And there was a lot of clients panicking because they worried that the banks might go bust before the 3 weeks were up and before they got the delivery into their account. Of course, gold bars held in safe custody for a client are not on the bank's balance sheet, and therefore there's no real danger. If the bank goes bust, you'll still have your assets which are held by the bank. And clients knew that. That's why they wanted gold instead of the piece of paper, which was basically a bank statement saying, we owe you. But anyway, long and short of it was, eventually, even though my bank did not go bust, the clients all got their gold, even though they had to wait 3 or 4 weeks for it sometimes. And then things eventually went back to normal. You can buy and sell gold bars within 24 hours, just like always. So what did that lesson teach me? That lesson taught me that when there's a panic, when confidence breaks, everybody turns to gold all at once. If you already have it, you don't have to worry about the queues. You already own your own wealth shield. So that's my message. Don't wait till there's a panic or a crisis to rush to buy, because everybody else will be doing the same thing at the same time and you won't be able to get your gold. What about today? You've probably noticed that gold is at a record level. As good as makes no difference. We're living in the biggest bubble in history. Not just stocks, everything. Property, equities, Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what you look at, everything is going up. So here we have an example, the Dow Jones, the Japanese index, the FTSE 100, the debt issued by the government, federal debt, United Kingdom debt issued by the government, French government debt issued by the government. This is not the price of the debt going up, it's the amount of the debt going up. Governments are getting deeper and deeper into debt. That's the second row down that you see here. Euro money supply is through the roof. The consumer prices through the roof, indexes through the roof. House prices at a record level. Gold is at a record level. Bitcoin's at a record level. And I just put one other thing I come onto here, it's meat prices. Meat prices are at a record level. And if you didn't know any of the others, you'll know that meat is at a record level from the prices you're paying in the supermarket. Why is that happening? Well, since 1971, when the USA and thus the world effectively went off the gold standard, the rest of the world was on the dollar standard and the dollar was on the gold standard. We came off the gold standard in 1971, and suddenly governments were freed from the handcuffs related to printing money. They could now print money without limit. So as the governments abandoned the gold standard, all discipline in money printing was removed. When governments spend more than they earn, they print the difference. Now, that comes about through a complex mechanism of the government issuing bonds, they're borrowing money, and then effectively the central bank ends up, maybe not immediately, but at some point down the line, it ends up buying those bonds to stop the interest rates going any higher. And as they buy the bonds, the central bank issues money, so the money supply goes up. And we can see that as of today, the money supply of virtually every country is at record levels. To pay that debt back, they have to borrow more money. And that creates a cycle. More debt needs more printing by the central bank. More printing makes the debt harder to pay. Many countries now have a debt to GDP ratio in excess of 100%. The most extreme of those is Japan, where the debt to GDP ratio is 250%. But there's plenty where it's 100% or more. But these levels of debt to GDP are impossible to sustain, because sooner or later interest rates are going to rise, and it's going to be impossible to roll over the debt at the same rate of interest, which will cause the interest rates to rise more and more, and then it all spirals out of control. In the 1970s, America printed too much money. It had been printed before 1970, that's why they had to abandon the gold standard in 1971. But as they printed, gold kept going up. Gold went from $35 an ounce to $800 an ounce. This wasn't speculation, this was people running for safety. Another example is in France in the year 1790. The French government started printing paper money called assignats. You can see one on the screen there, that's an assignat for 100 French francs. And these assignats, they said, were secured by land owned by the church. So at first people believed that these notes were backed by something tangible. But as the government printed more and more of these notes, it soon became apparent that they weren't backed by anything at all. So by 1795, just 5 years after its introduction, these assignats had lost 99% of their value, and they were still heading downwards. But of course, the collapse of the currency caused economic chaos. How likely is it that your currency will end up at zero? Here's a bunch of banknotes from my paper banknote collection. How many of those currencies are worth nothing? Answer, all of them. All of these paper currencies ended up worthless. Some very quickly, most of them fairly slowly. It started a little bit, accelerated, and then suddenly it came all at once when nobody wanted the money. Gold is not a government debt. It's not a company stock. Gold is a real thing. It's something that you can hold in your hand. It's something that you can keep for yourself. You can hide it. You can carry it across borders. No government can print gold. They can print infinite amounts of cash if they choose to do so. No central bank can create gold from nothing. In fact, all the gold ever mined since the beginning of time could be fitted into a 68 feet tall, wide, long cube. Central banks are buying gold like crazy. China bought tons of gold last year. India bought tons of gold. Poland bought tons of gold. And these are central banks which print money for a living. So they've got a pretty good idea what's coming, and they're trading their own paper, which they've just printed, in exchange for gold. This should tell you something. Either you follow them or you don't. But I think that they know which way the wind's going to blow. Here's the bad news for everybody, and I'm sorry to tell you this. The current system is coming to an end. It is ending. The maths doesn't work. The debt is too big. The printing is too much. The system's going to break. When this system breaks, paper will turn to its true value, zero, and gold will return to its true role, real money. This isn't a prediction. It's mathematics, it's history, and it's inevitable. The only question is when. What will be the catalyst to cause this to happen? It will come, and I'm very sad for those who are not prepared for it. But if you're listening to this, I think you know what to do. So, why do I hold gold? Because it's my parachute. It's my safety net. When something happens, it will get me to the other side. Gold has always had value, and it's always wanted, anywhere, anytime, and by everyone. Gold has outlived empires, it's outlived governments, and it's outlived every currency almost that ever existed. It will outlive the current system too. So gold is private. You don't need permission. You don't need someone telling you what you can and can't do. Gold is portable. Take it with you where you want. And gold is permanent. It'll never get crinkled or old or shoddy or torn. You can hold your gold in one coin. You can hold your gold by stacking bars. But whichever way you choose to hold it, you can keep it. You shouldn't think about selling it. This is not a profit thing. It might make a lot of profit, but that's not the point. It's an heirloom. It's something that you will be able to pass on to your children, just as my Belgian lady did. Her grandchildren were very grateful that she could pass this wealth onto them, which just wouldn't have existed had she put it back into fiat cash. So your children or your grandchildren will benefit from holding some gold. Gold lasts. It's wealth that lasts, is as powerful as the trust behind how you own it. It's not just the coin in your hand, it's the confidence that you're doing the right thing. Holding some gold will make you feel secure, no matter what the world throws at you. This is why I've decided to work with ITM Trading. They've been guiding families for years. They share the same philosophy as my grandfather taught me. Keep your gold forever. Real wealth isn't speculation with paper. It's protection with something tangible. It's passing something real to the next generation. So if you want to discuss whether gold should be part of your portfolio, you can talk to ITM. They can talk about whether it's suitable for you, about whether it should be in your portfolio, about what sort of gold you could own. They don't rush you. They just help you to understand gold's role in life. They can help you plan around your personal situation. Go and look at their reviews, which I just looked at, the Google reviews, 505 of them. See what other people say and draw your own conclusions. People say that the ITM Trading team treat them with care, treat them with respect, and treat them with patience. That's rare these days. So I read ITM operate with integrity. I think we're living in an end of an era. It's the end of the fiat era. The fiat money experiment is failing. The debt bubble is bursting. The everything bubble is popping. Paper currencies are returning to their intrinsic value, zero. This isn't fear-mongering. This is mathematics. This is history repeating itself. When the reset comes, those who are prepared will survive. Those who don't will suffer the consequences of holding paper money which goes to nothing. The sovereign that my grandfather gave me has been with me for decades. I'll pass it on to my children. It's a symbol of resilience, of safety, of independence. For me, gold isn't an investment, it's protection. So if you're thinking of starting your own gold story, and if you're in America, I encourage you to reach out to ITM Trading. They can help you protect what matters most. Just as my grandfather intended when he placed that gold sovereign in my hand all those years ago, 50 odd years ago. And he said the right words. Keep it forever. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Clive Thompson. Thank you for watching. If this was useful, please give the video a like. And of course, I'm open to share and listen to you when you have your gold stories, if you want to tell me them. Remember, the fiat system we're in is ending. Gold will see you through to the other side. Protect yourself. Protect your family. Get your protection today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment.